Welcome to Real Life Stories. I'm Norm Rasmussen. Chapter 26, Give It Up, Give It Up. I have spent the better part of my life wishing for something more than I had. I'm the youngest of 4 children of an alcoholic father and a dominating mother. My dad was a very gentle man who turned to alcohol to run away from his problems. He got drunk every single night. My mom, on the other hand, was cold, dominating, and controlling. When she got mad at someone, she would explode with anger, call us kids the most horrible things a mom could say to her kids, and then not speak to anyone for days. There was arguing, screaming, and fighting in my home while I was growing up, almost every night. Being the youngest, I was the forgotten child and got lost in the shuffle of the dysfunction. I remember always wishing that I could be a part of someone else's family, a family who loved and laughed, a family who cared about one another and did things together and had fun. During my high school years, I ran away from home a handful of times. I would stay with friends for days just to get away from what was going on at home. I would always call my mom to let her know where I was and was met with silence and then the click of her hanging up on me. Then I would cry and wonder why she didn't care about me. When I was 18, I was raped. I was terrified to go home. When I finally did get home, my mom could see something was wrong. When I was able to tell her what happened, I was met with her silence. Instead of feeling comfort, I felt condemned for what had happened to me. After that, it seemed to me that any man I came into contact with was only interested in sex. I stayed as far away from them as I could. I never felt like I fit in with my friends. They all had boyfriends, and I didn't. I wasn't sure I even wanted one either. I started smoking and drinking to fit in. I met my husband in a bar. All the warning signs that I should have seen were overshadowed by how he made me feel. He made me feel loved, or so I thought, and he made me laugh, something I never did while growing up. At the time, I was living in an apartment that I couldn't afford. I was on the verge of moving back home with my parents, and that was the last thing I wanted to do. I was very much enjoying my independence. So I asked my future husband to move in with me. He had asked me to marry him several times, but he was drinking heavily at that time, and the warm, fuzzy feelings were starting to fade. We'd been living together for about 2 years when I became pregnant with our first son. The choice was made for me, and we got married when I was 4 months pregnant. Shortly after our first son was born, I was feeling very strong about getting into church. We found a Baptist church that we both liked, and before too long we both gave our hearts to Jesus. We were also both baptized. My husband stopped drinking, and we lived a Christian life for almost 2 years, but then we walked away from God. I can't really say how or why, but we did. It wasn't very long before the drinking started again. Something changed in my husband after we walked away from God. We had 2 more sons during that time, and very slowly and subtly, he became mentally, emotionally, and verbally abusive to me and the kids. According to him, it was all fun. But when you're on the receiving end, after a while, it isn't fun anymore. The drinking continued. Several jobs were lost, and the finances were always in a desperate situation. He started to withdraw. I fell into a constant depression, thinking that if I did this or that, things would be better. I had 3 young boys and no support or help from my husband. We were never a team, never partners. There was no respect. He would put me down in front of the kids. He was the, quote, good parent, unquote, and I was the, quote, bad parent, unquote. He'd always tell me that I was the problem, and after a while, he had me believing it. This went on for years. Those feelings from childhood surfaced again. Why can't I have a loving family? I asked myself. I was a nobody and a nothing in my own home. It was them, the three boys and my husband, against me, at least I thought. The only thing I was good for was the cooking, cleaning, laundry, and sex on his terms. I withdrew mentally, emotionally, and physically from my husband. The anger and bitterness started building. I asked him repeatedly to go to counseling, but he refused, saying there was nothing wrong. I asked him to separate so we both could reset our priorities. He told me if he wanted out that door, he was never coming back. I was doing everything I could think of to repair our marriage. During this time, our oldest son had given his heart to Jesus and was trying to get us to go to church with him. We went a few times, but I felt like a phony putting on a show as the happy family, when in truth my marriage and family was in shambles. My husband had to have an angiogram on his heart due to blockage. He had this done 2 days after September 11th. Both events scared him, and things settled down between us for a while. Then my husband fell and broke his knee. He had surgery to put pins in his knee. He was off work for 4 months, unable to walk. I stayed home to care for him, and we were actually getting along. When we went back to work, things broke down between us again. One morning, I received a call from my husband that he had been fired from his job of 14 years. Several years earlier, he had told me of a scheme that a coworker had to get money from the company. I told him that only a fool would jeopardize his job for a few extra bucks. Unknown to me, my husband had been doing it for all these years to the amount of $10,000 and had finally been caught. I was devastated and numb to everything. All I could think of was, who is this man I'm married to? We lived for 10 months with no job, no money, nothing. The wall between us was so high I couldn't see over it anymore. I had lost all respect for him, and I told him so. The anger, bitterness, and now resentment that he would jeopardize the welfare of his family took control of me. We're going to end this here. This is part 1, and we're going to pick it up on a part 2, okay? Sorry about that, but we're just not going to have enough time to get off the entire chapter in a 10-minute segment, okay? Thank you. God bless.